Hey, it's Rick. Welcome to the channel. In this video, I'm going to take you through my process to design, sculpt, and cast this Dreamsicle stash jar. I started with a simple idea drawn out in my sketchbook. This is the easiest way for me to visualize designs. I immediately start the base modeling in Modo. I like this program for simple geometric shapes. I create the positive shapes that I'll use in ZBrush as booleans to cut away from the popsicle. I find ZBrush is a lot slower for creating simple geometric things. It's better for complex sculpting. I make all the parts for the body as well as the lid. I export all the elements and then do the boolean work in ZBrush. I love the live boolean feature in ZBrush. It allows you to see the shapes you're going to get without doing any destructive actions on your model. You can also use the live boolean function to examine cross sections and see if it's going to be too thin. I use alphas to mask off the logo so I can emboss it into the handle. I also sculpt in some wood texture. When I'm done sculpting, I'll print the parts on my resin printer and make sure everything fits okay. You'll find that resin printers don't make parts to exact size. Depending on your exposure settings and type of resin you use, your parts may shrink or expand slightly from your measurements. Then it's a matter of preparation. My resin printer still produces layer lines at about 20 micron height, and they have to be sanded away. I don't want to use putty or primer on this since I want to sandblast it for a frosted texture. I want the final product to look frosty cool in places, but then smooth and shiny like it's melting on the top and the edges. I buff the top and edges on a buffing wheel. Now to make the mold. I sealed its inside edge with plasticine so that silicone wouldn't fill that void. Then I stuck it down to a piece of board and attached 3D printed registration keys with sticky wax. Once this is done, I put a 3D printed mold case over it and wax that in place to prevent leaks. I mix a batch of Mold Max 30 and fill the mold. Once it cures, the mold can be removed from the board. I carefully remove the plasticine and registration keys, and this is where we are. I'll wax on a mold case extension now for the second part of the mold, and I'll attach wax sprues to fill and vent the mold. I paint the silicone with a mixture of Vaseline and mineral spirits so that the new silicone won't stick to the cured silicone, otherwise you'll have to cut them apart. Then I mix up another batch of silicone and fill the mold. I did this part in 2 pours. After the first cured, I set the 3D printer reservoirs in place and poured the second part. When it comes time to open it, I split it with a Dremel tool and a metal cutoff wheel. This is how it opens up. I made this metal hook to help with cutting molds open. It's based on a design I saw online. It's essentially just a third hand to help spread the silicone. Silicone cuts much easier when it's being stretched. I make a few short slits down the side. I only cut as much as I need to free the part. I want to minimize mold lines. Then I can pull it free. Now for the lid. I want this to have a shiny finish, so the last step is to spray it with a urethane paint. I go through the same process with the lid, stick it down to the board with wax, and place a 3D printed mold case around it. Next, I'll mix up another batch of silicone and fill this mold. Once it's cured, it's just a matter of releasing the master. After I split the mold case, I used elastics to hold it closed tight and prevent the silicone from flexing while the part cures. The grooves I've cut on the top of the silicone are so that the resin doesn't spill down around the mold case. Because this is an open-face mold, there'll be some cleanup on the top. I do that with some sandpaper. The only thing left is to put on a gasket to keep the smell in and keep the lid from falling off. I make these gaskets myself. I've got a video on that process and I'll put the link up in the corner. I've made some stash jars in the past using FDM printing, but I was never happy with the finished quality. Casting them makes for a much nicer product, and you can do all kinds of specialty finishes like transparency, glitter, metallics. You could even do glow-in-the-dark pigments. Your options are limitless. Anyway, that's it for this one. I hope you got some inspiration out of this. Hit all the buttons on the way out, and thanks for watching.